What's up, you guys? Sean Ross Sapp. Welcome to Fightful. Here with the name, the owner of GCW. They have events all the time, but a big one coming up January 19th, Hammerstein Ballroom, the People versus GCW. Tickets on sale now. We've got Brett Lauderdale. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well, Sean. Thank you for having me, and thank you, thank you as always for all the support.
Yeah, and filling your houses. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Just the usual. The
Well, it was a
usual.
sellout, so
It was a sellout, and a lot of people called me a sellout. So, man,
no,
a
don't
rare
worry, you're in
double
good company.
sellout.
I've also been called a sellout, so
So, man, you're running Hammerstein Ballroom again. What did you learn from the first go around running that show?
well, I learned that the bigger the show, the more people that are in attendance and the more people that are watching equals more opinions, and everybody has an opinion on how it should be done and how it should have been done, um, and that's all cool. That was obviously a bigger scope than anything we'd ever done before. So, in some ways, it was overwhelming. You have so many people saying, "Wow, that was the greatest show I'd ever seen," and then there's also a lot of people who said that was the worst show I've ever seen. So, it's like you have to try to find and keep that balance, and remember, ultimately. Who you are at the end of the day. But I of course I learned some things along the way. I learned the value of being GCW in the first place, and that we need to remember that you know GCW is who people want to see, and that's what we have to give them, if that makes sense.
For those unfamiliar, what kind of hurdles did you face there that maybe you wouldn't have faced running other shows? Because I know New York can be tricky.
Of course, the New York State Athletic Commission is very strict and relentless and unforgiving. Even while a show is going on, they have a representative at the event at all times, and he's not just sitting somewhere up in the balcony. He's following us around, telling us every little thing that he thinks is going wrong. If it was anybody else, you could tell them to, back up, but
Yeah.
you can't really tell that to the New York State Athletic Commission. So, that's always a little extra, headache, for lack of a better term. But so there are those challenges. You can't do all the things in New York that you might do in other places. But the Hammerstein Ballroom is not Harpo's in Detroit. It's not Headliners in Louisville. It's not the Showboat in Atlantic City. It's a little different. It's aside from being insanely expensive, they run their ship a certain way, and you kind of have to fall within the parameters and operate a certain way. There's it's a real world-class facility where you know um, you can't just go and do whatever you want, if that makes sense. So
Yeah.
those are among the challenges.
I mean, the commission element of things, definitely from state to state, I'm sure makes things a little bit more difficult for not just you, but wrestlers as well. I can tell you, like, my personal experience with the commission. It's not exactly easy. Sometimes it can be confusing, but are there any benefits you see from that, or like for what you do and what you think wrestlers do? Do you think it'd be better off just being unregulated to a more extensive degree?
Well, it's hard to say. I mean, I think some regulation could be beneficial, but I think at this point we're probably too far gone. Once you
Sure.
unregulate, it's hard to go back. Are you going to go back and start regulating in all the states that are now unregulated? Um, I mean, it's so hard. Indie wrestling, at the end of the day, indie wrestling is not on the radar for most states, including the ones that do have a commission. It's like
Yeah.
we're spending all this time for what, a couple $100 at the end of the day. A lot of this exists just because it always existed and it hasn't been abolished yet. So I don't know. I mean, could wrestling or indie wrestling benefit? Maybe if there was, an actual intelligent way to regulate it. Probably. There's probably people doing this that shouldn't be doing it. Probably people promoting events that shouldn't be promoting events. But I guess it's hard to figure out. Even if you had regulation, there'd still be people doing it that shouldn't be doing it, and there'd still be promoting events that shouldn't be promoting events. So I don't know. I guess you'd have to figure that out. But I think at this point we're so far past that. I don't know how you would go back.
Just my opinion. I've always looked at it as a money grab. That's how I've always felt about it. I don't feel like I feel like every wrestler should be able to do 100 jumping jacks. Yes. But if it was that much of a concern, they would have the commissioners have the ability to approve those medicals on site as well to make sure that people are of appropriate health, as opposed to scheduling doctor's appointments, sending the results, all that stuff.
Right. And you're right. I mean, at this point, it has really just, if it's not a money grab, what is it? I mean, there's no way to pay the attention to these. I mean, maybe at one time these were good intentioned regulations, but I mean, I know that there's, 20, 30, 40 events going on in the state of Pennsylvania every Saturday. And there's one or two representatives of the commission, even available. You can't have somebody at every event. So at this point, it's like you're collecting $200 here, $200 there. There's no real regulation going on. It's just get the 5% of ticket sales, and and again, most events, that's what, $100, $200.
The way I've broken it down to people that don't know, in Kentucky, before you train and take a bump, you're supposed to go get licensed. And then the moment that you're licensed, like if my wife wanted to train to be a pro wrestler, she gets licensed and she has the same rights as Shelton Benjamin, Batista, John Cena, and all the people that came through OVW in 2002. So it's like getting your driver's license by just saying, I would like my driver's license, and getting the eye test. But beyond the commission stuff, you all had a phenomenal commercial trailer, whatever it is you want to call it, video for the People versus GCW. I mean, GCW and Joey Janela especially have always done like really good with these videos, and they're top quality. How does putting something like that come together? Is it when you already have a show and you bring people in to the filming site while you guys have a show booked? Like, how does the process of that work? Because it came out really well.
Yeah. Well, this one in particular, I actually had this concept in my head for a couple of years now. Just waiting for the moment when we're going to go back and waiting to unleash it. But I mean, of course, we have, I always have a couple secret weapons in the back pocket and people I can call, when I absolutely need them. And this is one of those instances where, this is the time where I call in the favor and here's the idea. And then, I work together with these people and we make it happen. I mean, this one in particular, I literally had to track down, a DOC, Department of Corrections prison bus, I had to track down, people on our team had to track down a prison set, a courtroom set. These are real, this is like real movie stuff that we did. We spent real money and real resources on this because we had to. This isn't the type, you don't half-ass something like this. If you're going to do it, you're going to go all the way with it. And that's what we did. And that's what we got. And yeah, I'm very proud of this video. And I hope, and it seems like other people appreciated it as well.
No, it came off great. It looked awesome. And then with each name that I saw show up there, I'm like, man, how does the scheduling even work for something like that? Because like WWE can't get all their people to commercial shoots sometimes. So how much of a challenge was that?
It was filmed over a couple different days, weeks apart. I tried to tie it to a couple of our big weekends when we would have as many people in town as possible. Some people weren't able to make it, that's why you see some people in one shot and not in the other, because, literally schedules sometimes just don't work. But we did our best to plan it around dates where as many people could be there as possible.
You guys have like greatly expanded your schedule this year. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously success is something that goes into that, but what is a part of the decision making there? Because you guys didn't, I mean, you guys had a ton of shows last year, the year before that, and
Yeah.
every year coming out of the pandemic anyway. But like, what goes into running like almost 100 shows in a year?
Well, I've kind of lost track, but I mean, our contract with Triller calls for 75 events a year.
Okay.
So, I mean, we have to be busy just by the numbers, but we were always prolific even before we had this particular contact with Triller. And part of it is just, my goal has always been to take GCW to as many places as we can, take it all over the world, take it all over the country. And, I take, I don't know, I take a lot of pride in that. And, I think that's what, drives me is, just being able to show GCW to as many people as possible. And the way to do that is to keep going to new cities and revisiting old cities and strengthening these markets. And, and I don't know, I guess sometimes, when I'm putting these schedules together, it's, they fill up quickly. And before you know it, you have shows 3 weekends a month and you forget, you're supposed to take a week off every once in a while. But, um, I'm just I am really proud of what we do, and I'm proud of our whole team. I mean, our guys are road warriors, really. I mean, we do this, taking of course, WWE schedule is incredible the way they do it. And but we do this we're in the streets, we're in the trenches, literally. We're putting 4 people in a car and driving from Louisville to St. Louis and St. Louis to Indianapolis. And I mean, this is real. These are hungry people, passionate people who love wrestling and love doing what they do, and that's really what GCW is all about.
How do you decide on a city and a location? Like, do you have somebody that sort of does a little site survey? Is it someone who, might have worked there before? I mean,
Uh-huh.
places like Headliners, like I had never imagined wrestling there, and then I
Yeah.
get there for the show, and it looks amazing.
Yeah. I mean, there's no designated person at GCW that does this. I mean, I am the designated person, but I know a lot of people in a lot of places, and yeah, sometimes I may do a site visit. Sometimes I may have somebody who can do it for me, or, and FaceTime with me. And sometimes I can do it blindly just based on what I already know about a venue. But at this point, GCW has been around doing this for a long time, and I know somebody everywhere. And if I don't know somebody, I know somebody who knows somebody. So, we have a vast network that, if I need to find a venue in this city, I always at least know where to start. And, yeah, I mean, it's just, when we, when we go somewhere new for the first time, and, you see all these people who have never seen GCW before. And, there's a lot of A towns out there that are yet to be, tapped. But, I like to pick the ones, the ones that love us and give the best reception. I don't like to do one and done. I like to go back. So you start seeing a lot of cities that, get added to the schedule again and again. And that's, I guess, how you get to so many shows a year, is because, Detroit has to be visited 3 or 4 times a year. Louisville has to be visited 3 or 4 times a year. Tampa, Chicago, Houston, Dallas, so on and so forth. So yeah,
Yeah, for
I like
those
to
that
keep it
are
consistent.
for those that are watching this in my area, you all are back in Louisville on I believe November 14th as well. How do you guys decide on naming a show? Because I mean, you have some that
Oh
are repeat names and all
yeah.
that, but there are some that I'm just like, how did he decide on this?
Yeah, no, the real answer is a lot of them are just, names of songs that I like, or
Okay, nice.
albums or whatever. There's every once in a while there may be a, like the People versus GCW. That's an original name. It's not just a song I picked.
Of
There's a
course.
few that have, original or I guess unoriginal, depending on how you look at it. But most of them are song titles, and yeah, at this point, a lot of them are starting to get reused because I ran out of songs. So, um, but yeah, there's no that's the true answer.
You guys also go to Hawaii. What kind of challenges do you pose there? How is the process of that? I can't imagine you guys are putting a ring on a ship and sending it over
Yeah.
there. So how does that even work
Yeah.
logistically?
Yeah, no, Hawaii. Of course, Hawaii is challenging. The actual story of how that happened. When I was, I guess it must have been 3 a.m. one night when I was, thinking about, what to do next. What are the cities, where are the places I would like to go. And I've put tweets up like this a few times where it'll say, who do I know in Hawaii? Who do I know in North Dakota? Who do I know in whatever? And you start to get messages or people that reply, and sometimes people slide into the DMs. And in Hawaii, when I put up the tweet, who do I know in Hawaii? Somebody from the actual venue that we're running it at DM me and said, "Hey, big GCW fan, and I work here. Would be happy to help you guys, make it happen." And I talked to the person, and that was step one. We had a venue right off the bat, and somebody to help ease us in the door. And then and then there is wrestling in Hawaii. There is indie wrestling in Hawaii. There's Oos Wrestling, which is a real thing. They run shows regularly. They have a ring, and they've booked several wrestlers who from the mainland. So and so Dave Prazak happens to be good friends with the owner. So there was the connection to Oos Wrestling and a wrestling ring. And yeah, I mean, it's hard, but it's also not that hard. A few text messages and you realize again, if I don't personally know somebody everywhere, I know somebody who knows somebody, and it comes together. So yeah, Hawaii is going to be sick.
You mentioned the Triller relationship, which is now expanded by another 2 years. I mean, I would ultimately believe that is just, well, it's a good partnership. It makes sense to extend it. But like, what kind of thought process goes into that? Because obviously, you guys have tried a variety of different methods over the years of distribution.
Well, actually, so our relationship with Triller actually goes back all the way. Well, our relationship with Triller, which is Fight, goes back to, God, I guess it would be as early as 2018, maybe.
Okay.
So, before that, we were doing. Okay, so I mean, of course, we were doing DVDs when we first started. There was we weren't doing live streaming. But off the heels of the first spring break and then the second spring break, our numbers were so good. From Flow Slam, and then I want to say the second spring break was on Fight.
I forgot about the Flow Slam era. My God,
dude,
that was a wild era.
The first spring break, which was 2017, it was part of More Than Mania, which was the Evolve weekend, Evolve Progress, GCW Beyond, Chikara, maybe.
Yeah.
Anyways, a lot of great companies, and the whole weekend was broadcast on Flow Slam. And of all those shows, Evolve, Progress, Spring Break was the most viewed show on Flow Slam that weekend.
Spring Break got insane buzz because, like, at that point, because of the ease of availability of indie shows, finally, we had a great demand of covering that. And I remember that year, Spring Break exploded, like with demand and people watching and people talking about it, and like our live chats were just wild for that show.
Yeah, so we got paid $1,000 for the first spring break. Wow. That's what they paid us for it. It wasn't even, I mean, there wasn't even a negotiation. It was, it was just, this is what they're paying for it. And at that time I was like, wow, $1,000, that sounds great. So anyways, we didn't stream again for the next year. And then after Spring Break 2, which was in New Orleans, I mean, that was like, the blast off, where it was like, listen, this is doing so well that we have to figure out how to do this for every show. Because if we don't, we're foolish. We're leaving money on the table. And yeah, we were really the first indie wrestling company to stream regularly again, on Fight. And it really ushered in the era of everybody streaming again, live streaming. And so our relationship with Fight goes back a long way. Fight, now Triller. And we've always just done really great numbers. It's been a mutually beneficial relationship. And my intention is to never leave Fight or Triller unless we have to. It's been that important to GCW's success, and they've been such good partners over the years that I'm proud to work with them. Through ups and downs for both of our companies, we're still here, and it's still a great relationship, and we still do great numbers. So I'm happy to continue that relationship.
Speaking of relationships, we've seen Nick Khan pop up at Bloodsport. We've seen
My
you in
good friend.
pictures. Your good friend Nick Khan, as well as your good friend Stephanie McMahon. So I'm fascinated with the process of getting approval and stuff. I know in some instances, like with Josh Barnett, he's straight up told me, "Yeah, I'll reach out to WWE," and they'll be like, "Yeah, sure." But was that surprising to you that the process seemed so smooth?
So yeah, the first time it was surprising to me because Josh is such an interesting guy, and it's so Josh. I remember when Josh told me, that he was friends with Nick Khan the first time, and I was like, oh, he probably met him at some time, like, how we all say, we're friends with somebody because, we had a good conversation with somebody once or a couple times, and I was like, oh, that's cool, but I didn't realize he meant like, no, he's like friends with Nick Khan, like he's actually like they talk to each other, they hang out, and I didn't realize that, and no, that's legit. I mean. Yeah, Josh has a relationship with Nick Khan and Triple H and others where, he actually can directly go right to the top and say, hey, do you think we could use one of these people? Or is there anybody who you guys would be willing to let us use or want us to use for the upcoming Bloodsport? And it's really, there's a little more to it. Once they say yes or offer a name, there's some processes that have to be, completed, but I mean, there is no, send an email into the void and hope somebody sees it and replies to you. I mean, he can go right to the top and get an answer.
You had mentioned the absence of Nick Gage ahead of the August show that he was supposed to do, and said you weren't sure when he would wrestle again. Is there any update that you can kind of provide on that, or any insight that you feel comfortable providing on that situation?
Well, Nick's been my friend for 20 years now. And I've known him, through, again, good times and bad times. And, no matter what happens, I'll always, have his back and be in his corner. And, part of being a good friend and having somebody's back is, being able to recognize when, trying to think of the best way to say, being able to recognize when, taking a step back is the best thing in the relationship. And, I just think it is and was in everybody's best interest, maybe right now, until further notice, maybe we need to take a little break and, let us do what, let us all do what we need to do. And, again, I still, Nick is still my friend. He'll always be my friend. And I always hope the best for him, whether he works for GCW or not, or whether he wrestles or never wrestles again. I'll always be in his corner and, be there for him at the end of the day. But, I think we're just taking a break right now and we'll see what happens.
I had mentioned the Bloodsport show, Josh Barnett's connection to it. I mean, that's got a soft spot in my heart for that type of show. It's how the type of wrestling I was brought up on and learned. But are there any other like specialized shows that you look at? Like we've seen Backyard Wrestling as well, which I love that. Are there any other ones that you've thought of and been like, you know what, maybe I'm going to do this one day?
Yeah, I have a couple more in my head that, I'm kind of waiting for the right moment, right time, right place. And yeah, I don't know. Now you're kind of motivating me to make some moves on them. But yeah, no, I
Like
we'll
I
always.
thought the Backyard Wrestling thing was just like It was so. I grew up in like Kazaa days and stuff where you're
Yes.
illegally downloading like backyard wrestling clips set to disturbed music and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I saw that and I was like, that Alex Zane doing a front flip over a car. I'm like, that's the type of shit that
Oh
I
yeah.
liked when I was a kid, and it got me hooked onto it and made me want to wrestle.
Yeah. I mean, that backyard wrestling in particular, it's just one of those things where it's like, people, traditionalists would say, you guys can't do that. You're a real wrestling company, or you want it, or you think you're a real wrestling company. You can't be doing backyard wrestling events, at this point in the game. And it's like, actually we can, and we're going to, we can do whatever we want. We're going to have fun. Not everything has to be so serious. And yeah, GCW's backyard wrestling is, the first one in particular was literally one of the most successful events we ever ran, with 0 tickets sold. It was still one of the most successful events we ever produced.
We've seen you all do stuff with DDT, with Tokyo Joshi Pro. Like, how do those come about? Who contacts who generally in those senses? I mean, obviously, when you're overseas, it makes a lot of sense to do those as well, ease of access to talent and the like. But when they happen in the U.S., how does that process start?
Well, again, it all goes back to, as I told you earlier, I want GCW to have a presence all over the world. I want fans all over the world to know us, and to bring GCW to places where it's never been before. And part of that is building relationships with other companies all over the world, and that's with companies like DDT and Progress and Tokyo Joshi Pro and so on and so forth. And I've always made it clear, it doesn't have to be a one-way street. I'm happy to help bring all these other companies to the United States as well, and spread wrestling together. We're all, at the end of the day, this independent wrestling thing, we're all on the same team, whether we want to believe it or not. So when indie wrestling is good, it's good for indie wrestling.
As we wrap up, I have to ask, review my performance at GCW. Believe me, was I the shits?
I would say you were not the shits.
Okay. Okay.
Were you Ric Flair, or
I did
Randy
more moves
Orton?
than Ric Flair. I did more moves than both of those guys.
Yeah, well, you probably did.
When's
But
the
no, I
last
thought
time you saw Ric Flair do a German suplex?
it's been a long time.
There you go.
I actually might not have ever seen Ric Flair do a German suplex, now that I think about it. But no, I thought, Sean, I thought you were pretty entertaining. I thought you understood the assignment, and yeah, you weren't terrible. So I mean that in the most
not terrible.
I mean that
Not
in the most
terrible is what
endearing
I'll
of
take.
terms.
Yeah,
So
I
no,
will
I
gladly accept not terrible. Admittedly, even I underestimated the heat I would get for just saying Lexington in Louisville. Like I mean,
well,
I knew the Louisville Lexington rivalry ran deep, but listen, like Louisville hasn't been relevant in so many years that I thought they just
mhm.
got over it.
Well, I'll tell you something. This is something that I talk to with Matt, that me and Matt Cardona talk about all the time. Uh, Wrestling is not that hard. It's or rather, it can be so easy. Pro wrestling. It doesn't have to be rocket science. You can say something like, mentioning Lexington and Louisville, and you can become the biggest heel on the show, and have the most entertaining match while doing the least moves. It doesn't have to be difficult. So, um, yeah, maybe Lexington's your ticket to the big time.
Anything else that you want to tackle before we wrap up?
Yeah, we have a couple other big things coming up. In addition to Hammerstein on January 19th, 2025, we also have a big show coming up on November 23rd at the American Dream, which is, it's the Mall of America of the East
Love it.
Coast.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a big deal. It's actually currently sold out. We're working with the mall right now to see if we can add some more seats or bring in some bleachers to let us increase the capacity, but we're already sold out. It's going to be a big deal. There's a fan fest in the after. I guess it would be So the show starts at 2:00. The Fan Fest goes from 11 to 2. The GCW show goes from 2 till whatever, 4:30 or 5, and then AEW pay-per-view is right down the road in Newark at 7. So it's going to be a fun afternoon of wrestling for people in North Jersey or for anybody coming to visit North Jersey. But this is the start of what I think is going to be a very exciting relationship with the American Dream. There's a lot of events coming to that area in the next year or so. If you you may have seen an announcement about SummerSlam. So, no spoilers, but there may be more stuff in the works. In addition to the show in November at the American Dream, we also just announced the Collective. Just announced it yesterday. The Collective in April of 2025 coming to Las Vegas. It'll be at the Palms Casino Resort at the Pearl Theater, which is an absolutely beautiful venue. It is the Palms is a beautiful casino and hotel. I mean, literally, it's just like Hammerstein. The Palms and the Pearl Theater is too nice for GCW, but that's not going to stop us from being there.
I love it.
Yeah, no, we're going to have, of course, the usual 3 days of wrestling, maybe more. We'll have hotel packages, an absolutely loaded schedule this year with some new participants who I can't name yet. But we're going for it. We're going for it. So, hopefully we'll be able to get at least the first round of details out next week. And those people looking to book hotels or make arrangements to be able to have a more clear picture next week of what's going on and when it's going on. And very excited for that. I love Las Vegas, and GCW has a good history in Las Vegas. So I'm excited to add another chapter. And Sean, as they say, what happens in Las Vegas stays in Las Vegas.
Indeed, they do. Well, I want to thank you so much for the time. Always great talking to you, and I encourage people to check out the GCW schedule. It's loaded every single weekend. It seems like they're doing not just one show, 2 or 3 shows. So make sure you guys keep your eye on that. Until next time,
follow us on X at GC Wrestling _. Follow us on Instagram at Game Changer Wrestling, and you can watch all our events on Triller TV Plus. I believe it's still just $7.99 a month, which is insane. You can see all the GCW events live, our entire library, and an entire library of other wrestling events and MMA. And there's so much. It actually makes no sense how good of a value it is. So subscribe before they realize how much shit they're giving you for such a low price, and they change it. So my understanding is, once you subscribe, you're grandfathered in at whatever price you subscribe at. So get it before they figure it out.
I am at the same price I have been at since the beginning. I can confirm that as well. Check them out on Triller TV. Until next time, my friends, we're out.
Yep.